Hello, my friend. You tell me that you are anxious and afraid of so many things that it paralyzes you. Well, this is a very common thing. And of course, the paradoxical truth is that the more you restrict yourself in a protective way, and the more you will fear what is out there, and the smaller your world becomes, and the more there will be fears. So by protecting yourself too much, you create bigger fears for yourself. And by going towards some of the difficulties in your life, push yourself, as they like to say, out of your comfort zone every day a little bit. Because that keeps you flexible, it keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you existentially alert. And that gives you confidence. By practicing that, you're practicing your strength. You're practicing what I would call your existential courage.
I took a trip to a few places this summer. Iceland, England, Ireland, and Scotland. I had been planning it for a year or so to go visit my friend Jeremy while he was living over in England. I wanted this trip to be substantial, a trip to end all trips, and a chance to finally escape the monotonous and desaturated Los Angeles. I wanted to release the anxiety and dread that had been building up after 5 years of college and an especially hard last 2. A summer of sleeping on air mattresses, getting used to feeling uncomfortable again was good, and so I leaned into it. While I was there, I wrote down some notes, capturing thoughts or moments that jumped out at me as interesting or worthwhile of remembering. I knew I wanted to see the amazing things that these countries had to offer, the amazing views and cities, but I also wanted to pay attention to smaller details, thoughts and moments that would usually be looked at as fleeting. As I wrote these fleeting thoughts down, I found that they shaped the story of my trip. Now that I'm a few months removed from it, and I get asked how the trip was or which was my favorite part, I've had a hard time saying anything. These abstract, fleeting moments were what made up the trip, and I'm okay with that because they were meaningful to me. I resisted the urge in me while making this documentary to try and come up with some overarching theme or purpose for my time there, and appear like the travel videos I've watched for years and the ones that initially inspired me to even go on the trip. But when it came to making this doc, I decided I wanted to be honest. I didn't know exactly what I learned, and who am I to say what the meaning of life is at 23 after just a month overseas? I don't know these things, but that's okay. I have the moments that I had, and it was good. A guide to nothing. My first stop on the trip was Iceland. I was there for only 3 days, but they ended up being some of the most powerful days of the trip. I was alone and drove over 1,000 kilometers in a camper van, seeing everything I could. Here's what I had to say. They gave me a free chocolate bar. It's pretty lit. I can watch the sunset in one place, get in a plane and watch the sunrise about 2 hours later. The world is big, but also small. And I'm just some guy on a plane trying to see a sliver of what it has to offer. There are these purple flowers in Iceland. They are absolutely everywhere. They cover the land like grass, and they're beautiful. The way they blow in the cold wind on top of a desolate landscape feels like life on a lifeless ground. The best part of the Blue Lagoon, which is the most touristy destination in Iceland, is the walk after you're done. My hair is wet and it's cold, but I don't mind after the warm springs I've been in. I'm just exploring the grounds. It's quieter outside and the air feels good here. There are these bright white swans that roam the island, and they look beautiful against the dark earth beneath them. I think I understand why Bjork was so obsessed with them. The back of a waterfall is one of the most powerful places I have ever stepped foot. The power of the water itself could crush me. I couldn't stop staring at it. I don't recall a time I had ever cried because of a view, but I cried 3 times while at this one stop. Twice at the views in front of me, and once more when I saw my first wild puffin. The sight of a glacier, and how small I feel when it takes me 45 minutes to drive past it. The fog finally lifting to reveal this iceberg lake. A moment of clarity after I drove 5 hours to get here, and I thought it was going to be cloudy the whole time. Seeing the sky still lit up with a sunset until 1:30 in the morning. How odd of me to assume that all sunsets in the world are as short as the ones I know. The sound of rain waking me up in the middle of the night on the roof of my van, so loud that it pierced through my earplugs, but I can't complain because it was beautiful. The touristy spots are worth going to, but ultimately the best time I've had here is when I had no itinerary and was just exploring and driving free. I overheard the most interesting conversation between an Icelandic woman and her Chinese friend, both with a shared language of English. They sat next to me in a hot spring, and I heard snippets of their lives as they caught up from not talking to each other for years. Connection is beautiful, and language enables that. And then there was England. Like I said, my friend Jeremy had been living there for a year, and me going and living with him was a good excuse for us to get to spend a ton of time together. I felt out of place in one of the most prestigious college towns in the world, Cambridge, where Jeremy lived. Everyone I met was 5 to 15 years deep into studying something that would be traditionally thought of as important or honorable. And I had just graduated with a degree in film from a small college in California. But getting to talk to these students who were so passionate about a field of work that was so drastically different than mine was probably the highlight of my time there. I've always thought that film was isolating. I tend to put my all into the creative projects that I work on. They consume me, but I kind of let them. It's my passion, and these people have a passion of their own. It's cool that their passion is different than mine. Solace under a willow, along a riverbank. I don't think I've climbed a tree by myself since I was a kid. England reminds me of home. The overcast days and all the green has made me homesick after a while. I'm encouraged to see how many good friends Jeremy has made while he's been here. Good people exist everywhere, and even if I had to drop everything and go somewhere new, I wouldn't be completely alone. A small cafe called Bean Theory has become my home on slower days. I've never been a regular at a place before, but it sounds nice to be known. The worship of evensong and hearing the light rain outside of the cathedral. Having tea and a scone in an apple orchard. It feels like green. Walking 52,000 steps in a day, alone in London. I arrived at 6 a.m. on a dark, dreary, and depressing day. No wonder I didn't like the city at first. But now that I've gone back with my friends, I had a good time here. I found myself staring at my reflection in the mirror. Do I have a naturally sad face? Am Am I the only one that thinks about that? Why am I thinking about that right now? A staring contest with a bright red fox in broad daylight. There is something spiritual about encounters with animals. I don't always know how to describe it, but when I'm watching them, it feels pure. Spending my time sitting in parks, eating treats from different cafes and watching the cows, birds, and people interact with each other. I think the pace of life here is slower and people enjoy their days better. Also, this duck has become my friend. At least I didn't think for a while. Look up and smile. What do you see? Tarry a while. Remember me. Ireland was next for only a few days. The grass here is a color of green I've never seen before, and I know why they call it the Emerald Isle. My first time on a double-decker bus. When I was young, my family would always point them out whenever they were around, but now I'm in one on the second deck in Ireland. The view from the window of my hostel, the church, and the sunset as I'm drifting off to sleep after not sleeping the night before. 1,000 people live on a secluded island in Ireland with a puffin sanctuary. I sometimes think I could live like that, but I also think I would eventually feel unsatisfied with my place, restless with nowhere to go. Have I been feeling that way recently? The best benches in the world are here. This is where giants walked, and I feel so small. Dublin is blue, but also beautiful. There is something about countries like Ireland or Iceland that fits with me. Something about the way it looks, blue and dark. It fits my worldview that I've adopted. This beautiful melancholy. The most stunning scenery covered in a thick layer of dark clouds and rain. An Irish blessing that reads, "May the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back, and may the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand." Scotland stayed, and the path to nowhere. On the train ride to Scotland, my last destination of the trip, I reflected on this podcast that I've been listening to for years. Making room for such a fleeting thought is not something I usually would have done, but I had the time and space, and here's what I wrote. My favorite podcast stopped making episodes back in March. I've been listening to old episodes ever since, pretty much every day. That podcast stuck with me for the last 5 years, through all my hardest days and all the changes I've dealt with in my life. It's always been a comfort to listen to it when I need to get out of my head. I was listening to an old episode this morning and realized that I've been holding on to that show to keep an ounce of who I used to be with me. I was a totally different person when I first started listening to it, but I'm different now, and that's okay. It's okay to change, and maybe I should try to listen to something else. While I was in Scotland, I walked a pilgrimage with 3 friends, from Edinburgh to St. Andrews, 60 miles of walking, rolling hills, long beaches, dry fields of wheat, ruined churches and castles, cows, sheep, seals, and birds. Walking across a 2-mile-long bridge, knowing that the first of my 4 days of walking was coming to an end. misty rain and the sun setting, a feeling of accomplishment and encouragement that the walk so far has been worth it. Blistering feet, 16 miles into the second day. Watching the landscape beneath me change. It feels like it's changing fast, but it's miles at a time. In one day, I'll be walking through a forest, across a beach, above volcanic cliffs, and then through green pastures. Seeing a town in the distance and knowing that it's the next stop in our journey, and then walking all the way there. It's satisfying to know how long it would take to get everywhere without real transportation. Wandering through pastures in Scotland, lost in fields of green, the middle of nowhere, no one around. The peace I feel sitting in a cemetery, under an abandoned church, unexplainable thoughts while I'm here, but I didn't want to leave. Something about this spot not being the final destination of the trip feels strange, because it's so powerful standing here. I don't think anyone can completely confront death, even when you're about to experience it, but I don't think that you need to. You can accept it and be at peace with it, and you can let death affect you from life experiences, but one cannot fully know what to expect when it comes to your life or the impact you'll have. The people beneath me had no idea that I would one day be passing by on a pilgrimage just to stop here and think about them. When I started to conceptualize this documentary, I thought I would need some overarching thought about my trip to structure the film around. Something I learned or something the trip has taught me. I knew I wanted to make something with the footage I got, but I didn't feel the trip taught me anything in particular that I needed to share. But I did learn a lot. The importance of the fleeting thought. I learned about all these moments and people and places and things that I would never have known if it weren't for this trip. I learned to be comfortable traveling alone and being independent. I learned that uncomfortability is good for a time. I learned that I don't want to live a life where small moments blend together, but instead be capturing these fleeting thoughts. And by doing so, I would learn to live in each moment and not have to figure out some existential meaning of life, but to just live it and know that I'm not alone in doing so. And that is the incomprehensive guide to nothing, the path to nowhere, and the importance of the fleeting thought.
Face life, face the challenges, get good at dealing with it all, be flexible, be easy on your feet, don't take it so seriously, and don't let your fears get to you. Don't let your fears dictate your life to you, my friend.